first one is to blame others. It's easier when we struggle or when we fail at something. It's a whole lot easier for us to looking at someone, looking at this environment, looking at this situation, to point fingers, say, you know what, Landon, it's your fault. It's your fault because you didn't give me the right opportunity. You didn't give me the right tools that I needed. Or maybe, oh, it's my mother. I didn't raise right. I had a bad background. I didn't came from a good family, right? You started naturally looking at all these things that are causes you to fail. And so we went from retreat, and from that retreat moment, and we begin to play the blame game, right? As you blame your environment, you blame your past, you blame people in your life. But here's the most dangerous one. So it's not about retreat. It's not about blaming others. It's not even about creating an environment that is conducive to help you to grow, to overcome that. But I think the most difficult, the most challenging one people have faced, for me personally, I know it to be a fact, is blaming yourself. Blaming yourself is the most paralyzed one that I've discovered so far. Because the minute that you fail, you don't want to blame anyone else. You take all the blame on yourself. What that does to you, it literally produces pressure. You feel so pressed. As if like you gasping for air. There's nothing coming out. You can't even breathe. I don't know if you've been there, but if you have not, maybe you will. So I'm saying this so you can prepare yourself to not fall into that, because this is where the question sneaked in. Okay? So when you begin to blame yourself for failing, it's the most dangerous one, because this is what's going to happen to you. You're going to begin to have suicidal thought. You're going to begin. Your mind will begin to tell you, oh, you're not good enough. You will never be. Exactly. You could not be. Who told you you could be? These are the thoughts that's beginning to go through your mind. For me, what I can share with you from my experience, some things that I've done is to keep speaking back to myself. Not lying to myself, but I'm my own critics. They're the worst critics. But if I am my worst critics, and I also have to be my best cheerleader. Okay? But now, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to over-exaggerate. I'm not going to try to be in denial of what happened. I failed. I screwed up. I messed up. Because whenever I've done something that I didn't do according to my potential, I know that I failed. I immediately go to that stage in the back of my mind, say, okay, Polo, you jacked up, you messed this up, right? But from that point on, and I'm beginning to ask myself those three questions that I'm very famously for, and I shared this with you in many occasions, is to quickly ask myself, what went right, what went wrong, and what can I do differently? The first question is what went right. I didn't go what went wrong first. I always ask what went right. And if it's something that I can go and review, I begin to see everything that I'm looking for, the right things from that failure. Opportunities, if you will. And so as I look at what went right, and then I go back to what can I do differently. This was right. I did this right. I did this right. Right. And so what can I do differently to improve from that? What I saw was right. Whether if it was one thing or two things. So in other words, I celebrate me first. So I won't allow, right, the self-criticism, the self-destructive attitude. Who told you could do this? Who do you think you are? I begin to minimize that voice, right? And then I go to what went wrong. Last thing, what went wrong. So what went wrong was this, and this. Now you're beginning to feel bad. You see why I start backward? Because if I had started with what went wrong first, which is where most people go, to what went wrong first. So you begin, by the time you really get to what went right, you have already paralyzed yourself. You can't even see or even imagine what went right, because you had what went wrong is outnumber the things that went right. So I think my advice is that always go back to yourself, encourage yourself first. It might not be to this level or to the degree of the steps that I've taken, but I think by you encouraging yourself first, as we saying this, and I'm thinking of David, right? King David he took a whole bunch of men with him, men that supposedly rejected men, people who society considered to be losers or who had nothing going on for themselves, right? So he bring these men, he embraced these men and create this big, huge army. So as they experienced a personal failure, because there was another army who came and took everything David had, took David's family, all the possession. So instead of the men looking at the men who make them, who help them to become who they are, which was their leader, their mentor, instead of looking and to see, okay, what are we going to do? They begin to blame him for personal failure, right? Everyone failed, and we all lost. Even him, he had 2 wives and children, family, everything was gone, right? But here's what I pick up from him that I was like, this was a huge deal to me, and I could see his skills of leadership in this man that's why he was credited to be one of the greatest leader and greatest king, is the fact that he went and encouraged himself.